Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Snowfall, Season 4, Episode 9, entitled Sleeping Dogs. So if you've heard that term before, you're probably familiar with the phrase "let sleeping dogs lie," which is essentially meaning like, if you hadn't started up shit, nothing would have popped off. You should have left well enough alone. And I think that title kind of ties into Irene's storyline in this one, right? So we see Irene go on a talk show called COINTELPRO, which, if you're unfamiliar, definitely look it up. Don't just listen to me, but COINTELPRO in short is it stands for Counterintelligence Program. It was set up by the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and it was basically meant to target the leaders of movements. So, and target them in the sense of like surveillance, discrediting them, setting them up for assassinations, all that kind of shit. Talking Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, all that kind of shit. So look up COINTELPRO. It's incredibly interesting, especially if you're someone who's into like conspiracies and whatnot, which I am not. But this is no conspiracy. COINTELPRO is a very, very real thing. But she goes to this radio show called COINTELPRO and spills the beans about Teddy and everything. And we don't see the entirety of the interview, but we see Teddy's reaction to it, which I think it tells us all we need to know. And long story short, Teddy meets up with her. He appears he's going to give her all the information she wants, which he does. They're at the bar drinking. Teddy leaves out. Irene leaves out. And then she falls asleep at the wheel. Teddy comes up, snuffs her out, suffocates her, takes her tape recorder and swaps it out with pills. So this read to me, and I'm assuming I'm taking the correct interpretation here, that at some point during their conversation, Teddy facilitated this. He slipped something in her drink or something that was going to make her pass out. And because, he wouldn't have just assumed like, oh yeah, she's probably going to pass out drunk and I could just show up and take care of this. Like, no, this was a plan. And you could feel it. I feel like she could feel it. That something just wasn't right. And, he leaves. She probably thinks like, oh, it's fine now. And that's what happens. And you can never think that you're gonna fuck with the CIA and make it out make it out unscathed. So, she had to probably seen this coming, but that's where the title, I'm assuming that's where the title comes from. That, had she let sleeping dogs lie, she would still be alive, and she is not. So, I did enjoy the way they played that storyline out. I thought it was a really interesting turn of events. Because at the end of the day, it kind of felt like Teddy didn't really need to do that. Like it's like everything was already ruined for him. But I think Teddy's in that downward spiral. You think about a situation with his father and his brother. You think about what happened in Panama with his guns and his money and trying to find the guy that diverted his money. Now he's got Irene snitching on him. He doesn't know what to do about Franklin's dad. Like everything's crumbling around him, right? So you have to figure like this guy's back against the wall. He's gonna do something crazy, and sure enough, he did. So interesting turn of events for Teddy and Irene. It's a good run, Irene, but I mean, you had to have known this was coming as a viewer from day one. Like you're not just gonna be putting all this business out there and think that you're gonna be okay. It's just not gonna happen. But really great episode here. I thought it was pretty strong, top to finish, start to finish, top to bottom. I merged them right there, but top to bottom, I thought it was a pretty good episode. Acting again, top notch. These actors have really been showing their asses for this whole season. A couple of really great scenes here from an acting perspective. I really enjoyed the scene between Franklin and Jerome when Jerome's ready to go ride on Drew. Franklin shows up and they have this fist fight, and there's a lot lying under the surface. If you watched my video about I think it was episodes 1 and 2 of Amazon series Them, I talked about the idea of having your hand held and how if you have a scene that plays out great where you put in the work to make that scene have some weight, it will pay off. But if you go back and kind of essentially show everything that you did to the viewer, like, hey, this is why this scene should be impactful, it takes away the weight from it. It makes it less impactful. Snowfall doesn't ever do that. Like, Snowfall lets you take in the scene. It doesn't tell you the things that you should have been catching and noticing throughout the course of the episode or the season or the show or whatever. And that added a lot of weight to that scene between Jerome and Franklin, because we know all season, what have I been saying all season? Franklin just been fucking up. Every episode, bad decisions, bad decisions. And I will say, this is the first episode. Franklin was on point tonight in this episode. So good decisions from him. But Jerome says at one point, like, every decision you made has been the wrong one. And I was like, thank you. He's been watching my videos. But yeah, that scene, because we know from day one, from episode 1, I said something about, there was a scene where Drew, they just insert this quick scene where Drew just says, like, everything was cool till Franklin got back up and running again. And they planted that seed in episode 1 that Jerome had a problem with how Franklin had been running shit. And now we get to this point in the penultimate episode, and Jerome's ready to make a huge mistake and doesn't give a shit. And now it's time for Franklin to stand in front of him and stop him. And that's the bottom. That's the final straw. You know, like Jerome's been holding in all this anger toward his nephew over all these bad decisions. Now he's ready to go, you know, get some revenge for Louis, and Franklin is stopping him. So you got a scene that's not just, you know, oh, they're just fighting to stop him. There's so much tension here, and there's so much emotion and regret from Jerome. Like, he's angry, but he doesn't want to do this, but he does want to do this because he's been pissed at Franklin all year and has had to all season, and has had to hold it in. So lots of weight there, you know, watching him. And then we know, like, they don't overtly say something like, oh, don't hit him, he's been shot. But like, they let that exist without telling us. And we know that Franklin's been shot. He's been walking around with a cane. He's winced on several occasions from things that have happened. And we see these punches to the body. Like, we know, like, these aren't just Jerome's big as fuck and these punches hurt. It's Jerome's big as fuck, these punches hurt, and he's punching a bullet wounded man who is not fully healed yet. So, and then we have the weight of Franklin sacrificing that because he knows he's fucked up. So he's got to deal with, you know, this is going to hurt even more than it normally would. And I really liked that line when he says, you know, when your sister and your mother ask me what I did to stop you, I'm going to tell them I did everything I could. Like, I thought that was a great line. That was just a great scene, and it worked. You know, they didn't end up going. So one of my favorite scenes of this episode, but this episode had a few. So Franklin confronts T. T says everything that she knows. She tells him the whole story, all that good stuff. And Franklin essentially says, you know, you're going to work for us. She calls up Drew, tells him that they're going to meet the plug. And Drew, smarter than the average bear, shows up at Khadijah's house knowing he was set up. But it was like a double setup because Franklin knew that Drew was too smart to fall for the original setup. So they come out and they shoot Drew. And I've really come to like Drew over the last couple of weeks. So I didn't like to see him go, but I like the way he went. He went in true man-boy fashion. He read every single one of them accurately. Everything he said about Jerome, about Franklin, about Leon, all was accurate. He completely eviscerated them in his final moments, and then gets shot in the neck. And Franklin says something like, he always talked too much, which is true. So a really great way. They really let him go out with a bang, metaphorically and literally. But man, sad to see Drew go, man. I really enjoyed him, but it was they played it really well. They being the show, treat us like the smart viewers that we are. Like, we knew that, you know, it tracks that Drew would be too smart to fall for the original setup. So I like that the show treats Drew like the character that they have presented us. They have presented us as Drew being. I don't know what the fuck I'm trying to say, but they remain loyal to Drew's character. Let's put it that way. So really good stuff there. And then lastly, we need to talk about Khadijah, and we also need to talk about Teddy a little bit. Alton a little bit. So Khadijah gets set up by our homies. They offer to pay them to be part of the team. Khadijah shows up. Leon's faking being tied up. Everybody comes out. And Leon attempts to apologize because you could tell Leon has been, just like Jerome, incredibly conflicted all year, all season. He hasn't liked how Franklin has handled the business since he's been back. He didn't like how things were handled when he killed Khadijah and Scully's daughter. He didn't like how things were handled when Fatback got killed. So it was like he's been in a bad place the whole time. He's been on the run himself for about half the season at this point. So he's really conflicted, and he apologizes, which I like seeing this growth in Leon. I still want to see the temperamental Leon because that's still my favorite Leon, but I like the fact that at the end of the day, they're making him into somebody who's realistic. You know, somebody who has to carry that weight of killing somebody's kid and now potentially killing that person just because you have to. Like it's you or me, you know, that kind of shit. So really good scene there. He's apologizing, and she can't even finish making her argument before Jerome shoots her. And again, you see Leon, again, incredibly conflicted. Like, he's just not in a good place over this. I think he was actually trying to literally give her an out. He says that, but I think that he really was trying to make it so that she could walk out of there. And didn't happen for her. Jerome wasn't having it. So I'm interested to see if they're going to, maybe like at the end of the finale, drive some sort of like incredibly deep wedge between Franklin and the combination of Jerome and Leon. They both seem to be really on the outs with him. So depending on how things play out at the end of the next episode, maybe they leave him and he's on his own. That could be how it ends. But last thing I wanted to talk about, which could be what ends up spurring them toward leaving him, or toward Franklin doing something that could cause them to leave, is Alton meets up with Sissy. They share a moment in the hospital. Franklin kicks him out, and Alton goes and looks at, he's watching TV wherever he's staying, and he sees that Irene is dead, and I read that scene as, oh shit, I could be next. Let me get the fuck out of here. And Teddy comes up to, this is just prior, Teddy comes up to the hospital himself and talks to Franklin and says, what are we going to do about your father? If this plays out to where Franklin ends up getting his father killed or killing him himself, that could be the wedge that drives Franklin and Leon and Jerome apart. I don't think he would do that himself, Franklin, but I could see him putting Alton in a position to where that happens. When you watch it on Hulu, you don't get the next week preview. So I have to go on YouTube just to look at it, which I normally don't do, but I did it this time. And the entire preview for the finale is all setting up Alton and Franklin versus Teddy. It's not addressing anything having to do with Scully, who I suspect is going to be a huge factor in the finale. This is a guy who, last we saw him, he's now mourning over his girl, and he's already had to mourn over his daughter. He seemed to be kind of trying to turn like on the right path, if you could say that. But I feel like this is probably going to push him over the edge. Like they're not just going to leave Scully like just, oh, I'm just a sad, broken man who is now just going to kind of just let things go. I don't buy that. But they play the whole preview as Franklin and Alton versus Teddy. And that leaves out the Scully stuff, but it also makes me wonder if this could ultimately be, like I said, if Franklin ends up getting Alton killed. And when I say getting Alton killed, if they're both in a situation where, like, they say they're in a gunfight with Teddy or just in a beef with Teddy in general, and Teddy kills Alton, that is still Franklin getting Alton killed. And I wonder if that would not only drive Jerome and Leon away from Franklin, but also pit Teddy and Franklin against one another. So that could be an interesting way to both close out the season and set up season 5. So lots of interesting stuff, lots of really good heavy scenes, lots of of unfortunate deaths, but some good endings to the storylines for Drew, Khadijah, and Irene. And they've left a few pieces left on the board for the finale. So should be a good one. Again, I think this is the best season of Snowfall. And now I can say it because there's only one episode left. They're not going to shit the bed so badly that I'm going to take that opinion back. So best season of Snowfall so far, I would say. And then the one last thing I forgot to mention, because the show forgot to mention, a third consecutive episode with Gustavo doing absolutely fucking nothing. I don't know what they're doing with this guy at this point. But I guess we'll see, but there's nothing even set up for Gustavo to do at this point, except maybe if he ends up popping up to save Teddy or something like that, and maybe he kills Alton or something. I don't know, but yeah, man, another wasted episode for Gustavo. But at least they did Teddy right this episode. So my season long respect for how they've handled the Teddy and Gustavo storyline. can resume after last week's debacle. So again, strong episode. Can't wait for the finale next week. See you guys then. Peace.